left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. It ain't the left side.
Welcome to another edition of On the FinSide. Here, looking at the Miami Dolphins Cleveland Browns matchup. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and subscribe to us on iTunes as well. We have a special guest joining us here tonight from Draft Breakdown. Pete is joining us to talk about the Cleveland Browns matchup. Pete, thanks for joining us tonight. Looking at the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation, obviously RG3 was down for the year, and Josh McCown got hurt last week. Cody Kessler is going to take over as your starting quarterback here, the third-round rookie. What do you expect out of Cody Kessler here over the next couple of weeks?
Based on where he's projected from coming out of USC in the preseason, I wouldn't expect very much. What he does well is when he can get the ball out of his hands quickly, he can be efficient, he's accurate, doesn't have a huge arm. But the longer he holds onto the ball, the worse things get. He takes bad sacks. In one of the preseason games, he took two safeties, including a Mike McMahon-esque running back out of the back of the end zone. So, I mean, there's not been much to show from him thus far that would make anyone feel terribly confident. But if he can, the big focus just has to be to get the ball out of his hands so he can let playmakers do it for him.
Right. So, and looking at your offensive line too, Pete, and we have Pete Smith joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at _Pete Smith _. He also works for NFL Spin Zone and NFL Draft Breakdown as well. So, Pete, looking at the Browns' offensive line, obviously Joe Thomas, Joe Bitonio, studs on the left side at left tackle and left guard. Cameron Irving's going to be, I believe, missing this game. How would you describe the rest of your offensive line from center to right tackle?
So, Cam Irving's going to be out with a bruised lung. He suffered last game, had to go to the hospital as a precautionary measure. As a result, John Greco, normally the starting right guard, will slide inside the center. Alvin Bailey will hop in at right guard, and then they'll have Austin Pastore play right tackle. Greco is an okay player. I mean, he's fundamentally sound. He's an assignment guy, but he's not overly athletic, so he's not going to give you a whole lot, which is what they like about Cam Irving, even though he's wildly inconsistent and really doesn't know what he's doing yet. Alvin Bailey's a pretty good athlete, but I mean, he's a backup to Greco, who is okay at right guard, so that's going to be interesting. But right tackle, Pastore is better suited to play guard than he is tackle. He's a good run blocker. He's good on the pole, but he struggles when it comes to pass protection. He's more suited to play in a phone booth. He has trouble playing in space, which he's gotten victimized at times this year. The Browns overall are better as a running team, a run blocking unit than they are a pass blocking unit, which is why they're on their third quarterback.
Right, and taking a look at that running back unit here, Pete, Isaiah Crowe, obviously a big performance last week against the Ravens, 134 yards, highlighted with an 85-yard run. Is it safe to say that Crowe is pulling away from Duke Johnson Jr., the former Miami Hurricanes product, in that running back race?
I think that's more of an indication of how they are concerned about Duke Johnson being able to carry the load than it is an endorsement of Crowell. I think they like Crowell and the fact that he's not afraid to run between the tackles and take on hits and keep going. But I mean, if you're talking about how actually productive Crowell is, that 85-yard run is a fantastic looking play, but it's really set up by the offensive line. In fact, I don't think Crowell was actually touched on that play. And the rest of the time, there's some good-looking plays, but overall his production isn't great. So it's not as if Crowell's a revelation or anything. I think the blocking scheme agrees with him this year more than it did last year, but it's still a wait-and-see approach with just how good they can be.
Yeah, and going along and also looking at the rest of your skill positions, wide receiver, unfortunate break with Corey Coleman, and just the Browns' luck on that. Similar to the Dolphins' luck in a lot of these cases. Yeah, it has a big game, traded down from the number 2 spot to get Corey Coleman. Fast guy, breaks his hand. Josh Gordon will also be suspended for this week, as well as the next 2 games. Terrell Pryor is going to be your number 1 receiver, and I believe it'll be Andrew Hawkins as the number 2 guy, correct?
Yes, Andrew Hawkins steps in, sort of the savvy vet that knows everything, and Jackson trusts out of that group. But obviously the big focus is going to be on Pryor and sort of watching him develop and just see how far he can go. Unquestionably, he's had some nice looking plays, but it's all about consistency and being able to get the ball to him more than anything. And it's not really Pryor's issue at this point. It's more of getting him good opportunities when he's gotten the ball his way. He's made some nice plays. Obviously, last week ended in sort of a controversial deal with that taunting call, but I mean, he made a nice play to get there. So there's a lot to sort of wait and see on it. And from a defensive approach, it's going to be interesting to see how the Dolphins and basically any other team try to match him up.
Pete Smith joining us here from NFL Spin Zone and Draft Breakdown, kind enough to share his insight with the Cleveland Browns, looking at this matchup with the Miami Dolphins. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, Pete, obviously there have been a lot of moving parts. One guy that's going to be a familiar name for Miami Dolphins fans is cornerback Jamar Taylor. My understanding is he's won that number 2 cornerback job. How would you assess his play so far in preseason and during the first 2 games?
I certainly would not say he won the second cornerback job, nor would I say the Dolphins missed him based on how he's looked for us. For the Browns, he's been a disaster. I think this was more of an indication of the Browns getting rid of guys they don't feel are their guys, this regime's group, whether it was Justin Gilbert, who's been a disaster. Pierre Desir looked like he had a shot to be something. And they basically brought in Jamar Taylor for a bag of balls and gave him the job, and he's done nothing to sort of look good. His technique is really bad. He's given up a lot of plays underneath because they're afraid to get beat and flips his hips too early. So if I'm the Dolphins or anyone else, I'm looking for and attacking him as often as possible.
Well, I tell you what, that's actually a relief on our end, because we thought that Jamar Taylor maybe would have been one of the best cornerbacks on this roster, which speaks to our cornerback situation opposite Byron Maxwell. Obviously, you have Joe Hayden at the other cornerback spot. Looking at your safety position, Jordan Poyer and Abraham Campbell, I believe, but I think Campbell may have an injury. How's it going there with your safety situation? Who do you expect to line up, and how do you expect them to do?
Ibrahim Campbell is sort of even though he's in his second year, he's sort of the steadying force in that backfield. So if he ends up being hurt or whatever, that would be a problem. Jordan Poyer is more suited to be a role player than he is a starting free safety. And the guy you'll see a lot of in different packages will be Derek Kindred, the Browns rookie 4th rounder, who's more suited to be a strong safety, but they keep playing around with him because he's good going forward and has some man coverage skills. So if it's Campbell healthy, then Kindred will be in there at times for Poyer and might be in there as an extra safety in general. And if Campbell's down, it'll be Kindred's show. But you shouldn't be surprised if you see situations where it's Campbell and Kindred, and one or both of them is blitzing in some form or in man coverage.
Well noted. Pete Smith joining us here on the FinSide. Looking at your front 7, I mean, it's a completely different unit other than Danny Shelton and Christian Kirksey from last year. You've got the rookies and Emmanuel Ogbah and Joe Schobert, also Carl Nassib, who I understand may be playing with a cast in this game if he plays. How would you sum up that front 7? Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, they're young and stupid, but they play with a ton of energy. They bring a lot of motor, and surprisingly, through the first couple games, they've actually been pretty good as a run unit. Now that's, it's hard to say. The Ravens were pretty stubborn about running the ball, but they just don't have anybody that's really going to scare you as a running back threat at this point. So it'll be interesting to see, coming up in the next several weeks, if they face a real good running threat and how they do against them. But against a team like the Dolphins, it wouldn't surprise me if they are at least in the right positions and playing with a lot of energy. Danny Shelton's been somewhat of a revelation. Now, last year he struggled. He should have been better. But this year he's, in part with his coaching staff and moving him around a little bit, he's been better as a nose. But the thing that's been sort of standing out about him is his ability to sort of be a threat as a pass rusher. He's actually gotten a couple pressures on guys and opened things up for teammates. And the guy who's benefited the most and sort of been the most reliable guy, which says a lot about where the Browns are, is Carl Nassib, who's a 3rd-round rookie. And when that's your most reliable player up front, you know where you're going. So if they club him up and he plays, that would be interesting to see how that would work. I tend to doubt he will. Schobert's undersized but can do some stuff. Ogbah is a freaky athlete with size, strength, and everything else, but he's got to sort of figure out what he's doing. I think Kirksey's played a lot better this year. I think this defensive scheme agrees with him. Demario Davis has been all right. The big problem this group has, and they're going to see a familiar face in Jordan Cameron, who hadn't lit the world on fire, but if there's a week to do it, it would be this week, because they've struggled really badly in containing tight ends, and every week the opponent have been able to find ways to exploit that. So it should not be remotely surprising if the Dolphins try to target him early on and see if they can't catch something and get that going.
Absolutely. So looking at, if I can go back to the offensive side of the ball for a minute, Gary Barnidge, I drafted the guy in fantasy football, late in the draft because he had 1,000 yards last year, and not much of a factor in these first couple of games. Do you expect that to pick up this week with Corey Coleman absent?
Yes, I think the Browns' overall inconsistency on offense hurt him. I think Josh McCown was a little bit better for him, but because just the sheer amount of things they have to do on offense, I think he probably gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, and having to go back to a guy like Hawkins as one of your starting receivers, I think Gary Barnidge will get more featured. Obviously, that paid dividends last week as Corey Coleman had the 2 touchdowns and 100 yards, so you can't blame him. But I do think this week against Miami, they should go back to feeding Barnidge.
So, Pete, this is Paul. Just real quick, I saw something in the news about Josh Gordon. I know he's not going to be back for this game, but I know you pay pretty close attention to the Browns, obviously. I saw that he had another warrant issued for him. What's going on with this guy?
So the situation is he got issued a bench warrant to get a paternity test for some baby a woman alleges he had. His lawyers claim that he didn't get any of the notices that he was due to take this paternity test. So I guess that is sorted out. He showed up, he took the test, so it avoids getting an arrest. But it's another situation where Josh Gordon's name is in the headlines for the wrong reasons. So that obviously brings that concern back up, but from the Browns' standpoint, they are basically rallying behind him. And Hugh Jackson yesterday said that he's been great in the building, and they're not going to let this sort of get in the way.
Pete, Paul and I are going to talk about at another time what the Dolphins need to do to win. From your vantage point, what do the Cleveland Browns need to do to beat the Dolphins on Sunday?
Biggest thing they have to do is run the ball and stay with it. Last week, I felt like they gave up on it despite getting the 145 yards total. 105 of that came in the first quarter, and they only ran the ball 9 times in the second half despite having the lead almost the entire game. If they can run the ball and be consistent, that's going to be key, especially if you've got a rookie third-rounder in Cody Kessler, who is going to be on the road in a big spot trying to not lose it. So I think that's going to be big. And then obviously getting the ball out of his hands from the defensive side of the ball. They've got to stop the run, and they've got to be able to make Ryan Tannehill nervous. If they let him get comfortable and he starts hitting guys like Devontae Parker, Jordan Cameron, and those, they're going to be in trouble because they don't have the secondary to stop really anybody. As soon as you get away from Hayden, and even Hayden is inconsistent, it's a free-for-all behind them. So they've got to be able to stay out of situations where they're in second and 5 and those type of deals where suddenly Adam Gase can dictate what he wants to do on offense. They've got to be able to really put them in predictable situations.
So taking a look at this, what is your prediction for this weekend with the Browns versus Dolphins?
I would be stunned if the Browns won this week, and frankly, if the Dolphins managed to lose this game, I'd be A, very concerned about Adam Gase, and B, very concerned about Ryan Tannehill. They couldn't ask for an easier situation for them. And it's, the Browns are in a situation where they are, without saying they're tanking, they've done everything to tank this season. And they're making it, all about the youth, all about development, which is fine. But then you have that, and now you're losing guys like Corey Coleman. You're losing guys like Carl Nassib. Coleman's probably going to be out for at least a month. Nassib, who knows? He had surgery on his hand. It's unclear what the situation there is, but they just don't have the guys to sort of stay with this. And the Dolphins have talent. Maybe not enough of it, but more than enough for a team like Cleveland.
Yeah, so what questions may you have for us heading into this matchup about the Dolphins?
I guess the only thing I'd be curious about would be expectations and sort of, if such and such doesn't happen, then where do you sort of look to blame or concern or question?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head right there, where if the Dolphins do lose this game in Miami, 10-point favorites against a third-string quarterback, you're missing Josh Gordon, you're missing Corey Coleman. then man, oh man, we're in a lot of trouble. I think that's Cleveland's best shot to win the game is try to keep it into a 16-13 game. But we place blame in a lot of spots. I mean, because with the Browns have a pretty clear idea that they're planning for the future. They drafted 14 players, 13 of them made the team. You're seeing what sticks this year. The Dolphins spent $8 million on Cameron Wake. They spent $8 million on Mario Williams. They've got all the money tied up in Ndamukong Suh, $8 million to Jordan Cameron. So there are veterans on this team who need to produce now. And if they don't produce now in this game and at least get to 1 and 2, give the Dolphins a fighting chance in Adam Gase's first year, then man, oh man, it's going to be a train wreck, and we may be pulling the plug here at the end of the year.
I'll throw in on that as well. One of the biggest concerns I have with this week would really be last week, and I know they were up against Bill Belichick, where a lot of first-time head coaches and defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators really tend to outcoach themselves and see ghosts. And Miami got away from what should have been their bread and butter in the first half with the no-huddle offense. Vance Joseph got terrified of their diminutive, slow receivers and had his defensive backs 10, 15 yards sometimes off the receivers, and really didn't put the player in position to succeed. They had odd rotations on the defensive line, where you see guys like Cam Wake get 16 snaps in the game. You see Chris Jones on the field and Terrence Finney with no Ndamukong Suh, no Mario Williams. And granted, they're trying to keep guys fresh, but this was even in critical situations like the final drive of the game for the Patriots where those guys were barely on the field. So it's definitely a situation where we need to see Gase and Vance Joseph put on their big boy pants in a hurry and really not see ghosts and just go out and coach football the way they need to.
Pete Smith joining us from NFL Spin Zone and Draft Breakdown, kind enough to share his insight on the Cleveland Browns with us. You can follow him at _Pete Smith_ on Twitter for additional Browns insight. Pete, thanks for joining us here today.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
All right. And as Brian Miller used to say, if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the FinSide. Solo D, take us home.
It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide.
Listen, Dolphins fans across the land all tuning in to see what Brian, Cat, and Paul about to do again. We rep our team, you can't change, stop, or ruin it. All we need is to figure what to do to win. Fins Radio, live and direct. Win or lose, we're showing up for every contest. No puppet talk, it's all raw and unfiltered. Voice of the fans when the season looks peculiar. Rockin' apple orange over here, then you familiar. Every week they coming through our speakers to fulfill the crave we have to hear about our team and all the latest news. Vets the rookies trying to make the team, paying dues. Current players and alumni interviews. City to city, state to state, follow the moves. Call the hotline, Dolphins talk set to go. Best sports team and show all across the globe.
It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide.
Who that?
So low, so low, so low, deep. So low, so low, so low.